You wake up in a room you've never seen before. The walls are bare, the air thick with silence. There's no door, no window, just four corners enclosing you like a silent verdict. But here's the strangest part, you don't panic. A quiet voice whispers, "This is where you've always been." And for the first time, you feel it, the weight of an invisible boundary, one you've never noticed until now. What if I told you that room is your mind? Not the mind you think you have, the one that chatters, plans, worries, but the one beneath it. The one that has been running the show without your permission, shaping your reality like an unseen architect. You've spent your life inside its walls, mistaking them for the horizon. But what if those walls could dissolve? What if the room was never real to begin with? Here's the paradox, you believe you're free. You make choices, chase desires, navigate life with the certainty of a captain at the helm. Yet, beneath the surface, your thoughts, fears, and even your deepest joys are not yours. They're echoes, inherited scripts, cultural hypnosis, the ghostly residue of 1,000 unexamined influences. You are, in every meaningful sense, asleep inside a dream you didn't create. Think of the last time you felt truly alive. Not just going through the motions, but alive, electric with presence, as if the world had sharpened into focus. How long ago was that? A month? A year? A childhood memory? Where did that version of you go? The answer is worse than you think. That version of you didn't disappear. It was buried, under layers of conditioning, under the slow erosion of should and must and can't. Society, religion, education, even well-meaning loved ones, they've all handed you a map, and you followed it without question. But here's the unbearable truth, no one who ever changed the world was following a map. So let me ask you, what would happen if you stopped? Not in a reckless, impulsive way, but with the precision of a surgeon cutting away illusion. What if you question not just your beliefs, but the very machinery that generates them? The stories you tell yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, what life owes you, what if they're not just wrong, but designed to keep you small? This is not abstract philosophy. This is the silent war raging inside you every second. A war between the you that was handed to you and the you that could be. Between the life you've settled for and the one that's waiting, just beyond the edges of your awareness. But be warned, once you see it, you can't unsee it. The room has no door because the door was never the way out. The way out is to realize the room doesn't exist. And that's where the real journey begins. You felt it before, that gnawing sense that something is off. Not in any obvious way, but in the quiet moments, when the noise fades and you're left alone with your thoughts. It's the unsettling suspicion that you're living someone else's life. That the desires you chase, the fears that paralyze you, even the voice in your head, none of them are truly yours. But where does this invisible prison come from? From the moment you were born, the world began shaping you. Not with malicious intent, but with the relentless force of survival. Your parents, teachers, and culture handed you a script. This is how to behave. This is what success looks like. This is what you should want. And like a child absorbing a language, you internalized it, not as opinion, but as reality. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to fit into society. But here's the tragedy, most people never take the mask off. Over time, the mask fuses to the skin. You forget it's even there. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this as the greatest human sickness, becoming who you are requires first destroying who you were told to be. But society doesn't reward destruction. It rewards compliance. So we trade authenticity for approval, sovereignty for safety. You think you're making decisions, but are you? The job you pursue, is it because you chose it, or because it was the most prestigious option your environment validated? The relationships you tolerate, are they nourishing your soul, or are you replaying childhood dynamics you never questioned? Even your rebellions, are they truly yours, or just reactions to the very systems you claim to reject? Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, the act of lying to yourself to avoid the terrifying freedom of true choice. Because choice isn't just power, it's responsibility. And responsibility is a weight most flee from. Why do we cling to illusions? Because the truth is unbearable. Viktor Frankl, surviving the horrors of Auschwitz, observed that humans can endure almost anyhow if they have a why. But what happens when your why is handed to you by advertisers, influencers, and the quiet desperation of those around you? You become what Arthur Schopenhauer called the pendulum between boredom and suffering. Chasing hollow goals, numbing yourself with distractions, then wondering why fulfillment feels like a mirage. Your mind is not your own. It's a battleground of, your brain tricks you into seeing patterns that aren't there, confirming beliefs you never chose. From birth, you're steeped in myths about money, love, power, that go unquestioned because everyone knows. Your brain craves certainty, so it adopts ready-made answers instead of wrestling with messy truths. Aldous Huxley warned of a dystopia where people love their oppression. But the real dystopia is internal, a world where you don't even realize you're oppressed because the chains are made of thought. This isn't just philosophical musing. This is why you feel restless even when you have it all. You sabotage your own growth without knowing why. You sense a vast, unlived life inside you, but fear keeps it locked away. The hidden problem isn't that you're trapped. It's that you've been taught to love the cage. But there's a way out. And it starts with a rebellion far more radical than you expect. You don't notice the water until you're drowning. That's how this works, the slow, silent erosion of your own awareness. Day by day, choice by choice, you become a stranger to yourself. Not through some dramatic collapse, but through the mundane, the habits you never question, the beliefs you inherit like hand-me-down clothes, the dreams you abandon before they even fully form. This is how identity becomes a ghost. Every day, you make small concessions to the invisible script, you swallow your truth to keep the peace. You dim your curiosity to avoid ridicule. You choose practicality over passion because that's just how life is. But these aren't just compromises, they're micro-suicides. Each one kills a piece of the possible you. Over time, the accumulation is catastrophic. You wake up at 40, 50, 60, wondering when you became this person, this hollowed-out version of yourself, carrying a grief you can't name for a life you never lived. Psychologists call this the unmarked grave of unlived potential. Philosophers call it the quiet despair. But you? You call it normal. Here's the cruel joke, you've been conditioned to crave what won't fulfill you. Consumer culture doesn't sell products, it sells identities. That car isn't transportation, it's a symbol of success. That skincare routine isn't hygiene, it's a promise of worthiness. You're trapped in a cycle of manufactured lack, always hungry, never nourished. Worse? The system self-perpetuates. The more you chase its rewards, the emptier you feel. The emptier you feel, the more desperately you consume. It's a closed loop, a snake eating its own tail. Modernity worships logic, but human beings aren't spreadsheets. You've been taught to overanalyze, to seek perfect decisions, to wait until all risk is eliminated. But life doesn't work that way. The most meaningful paths are taken despite uncertainty, not after it vanishes. Meanwhile, your 20s dissolve in preparation. Your 30s evaporate in hesitation. Your 40s arrive with the chilling realization you were never waiting for the right moment. The right moment was waiting for you to show up. You think you know yourself, but you only know the version reflected back by others. Your parents' expectations, your partner's desires, society's metrics of success. Like a chameleon, you unconsciously adapt to your environment until the original color is lost. Then one day, you look in the mirror and don't recognize the face staring back. This is why loneliness persists even in crowds, because the person they're responding to isn't you. It's the performance. The real you? It's buried so deep even you can't find it anymore. Your brain is wired for efficiency, not truth. Once a belief takes root, whether it's "I'm not good enough," or "money is evil," or "love requires sacrifice," your brain seeks evidence to confirm it. This is confirmation bias at work, a mental prison where the bars are made of your own reinforced thoughts. Even your memories aren't safe. Each time you recall an event, you subtly alter it, reshaping the past to fit your current narrative. Over decades, your entire life story becomes fiction. This isn't sustainable. The body keeps score. The soul keeps receipts. Eventually, the dissonance between who you are and who you pretend to be becomes unbearable. This manifests as chronic fatigue with no medical cause, sudden, inexplicable rage at minor inconveniences, a haunting sense of "there must be more than this." These aren't symptoms to medicate away. They're your psyche screaming for emancipation. Two paths now diverge, rationalizing, numbing, pretending not to notice the gnawing void. Face the terrifying truth: everything you've built your life upon might be someone else's dream. The first path leads to what Kierkegaard called the despair of not knowing you're in despair. The second? To a revolution so profound it rewrites your entire existence. But revolution requires weapons. And the first weapon is: the moment you realize you've been asleep is the same moment the nightmare begins. Because now you have a choice: go back to sleep, or tear your eyes open in the dark. Most choose sleep. The blankets of habit are warm. The alarm clock of awakening is violent. But you're still reading. Which means part of you already knows there is no going back. Rebellion doesn't begin with grand gestures. It starts in the microscopic spaces between thoughts, that flash of resentment when you say yes, but mean no, the hollow laugh at a joke that isn't funny, the split-second hesitation before you censure yourself. These are your battlefields. Carl Jung called this the shadow work, dragging the disowned parts of yourself into the light. Not to destroy them, but to reclaim their power. Every time you honor an authentic impulse over a conditioned response, you plant a flag in conquered territory. Your identity is a house built on rotten foundations. You have two options: live in the lie, and watch the walls crack, pull it down yourself, and rebuild from bedrock. The process is brutal. Question every should. Why do you believe this? Who benefits from your obedience? Follow the money of emotion, that sudden anger, that unexplained sadness. They're treasure maps to suppressed truths. Become a traitor to your conditioning. What would the unscripted version of you do? Nietzsche's warning echoes here: you must become chaotic before giving birth to a dancing star. Your brain is a meaning-making machine, but it's been fed poison data. Reset it with these counterintuitive tactics. What if the universe is conspiring for you? For 1 week, interpret every obstacle as a coded message meant to guide you. Watch how reality rearranges itself. When you can't sleep, ask, what am I trying not to know about myself? The answer will terrify you. That's how you know it's true. Seek out experiences that make your persona squirm. The richer the resistance, the richer the revelation. Viktor Frankl's great insight in the concentration camps: everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude. Your pain isn't the obstacle, it's the raw material. The question isn't why is this happening to me, but what is this preparing me to become? History's greatest liberators operated in secret before striking openly. Your emancipation requires the same strategy. Create mental safe houses, books, art, and relationships that nourish your unmasked self. Develop coded language, journal in metaphors your censoring mind can't decipher. Recognize fellow travelers. The people who really see you will terrify you at first. There will come a day, maybe today, when you face the choice of choices. Do you betray your awakening to keep the love of those still asleep? This is where most revolutions die. Not in fire, but in whispered compromises. But if you hold fast, you'll discover the secret every authentic life whispers. The people who truly love you don't love your mask. They love the prisoner they sense behind it. And that's when the real work begins. You've walked through fire to get here. Through the dismantling of illusions. Through the terror of standing unmasked. Through the raw, bleeding edges of a self not yet fully formed. But now you stand at the precipice of the final revelation. The one that will make every previous struggle suddenly, painfully clear. All this time, you thought freedom meant escaping something, the system, your past, your own mind. But here's the devastating truth: there is nothing to escape. The prison was never real. The chains were made of smoke. The only thing holding you captive was your belief in captivity itself. This is what the mystics meant by enlightenment, not some blissful state of perfection, but the gut-wrenching realization that you were already free. You just didn't feel free because you kept checking the locks on an open door. Consider this: the you that feels trapped is the same you that created the trap. The thoughts you take so seriously are just electrical impulses in meet. The entire drama of your life unfolds in less than a cubic foot of brain tissue, and yet, you've been living as if this were the only reality. As if the stakes weren't imaginary. As if the universe weren't screaming through every sunset and supernova, wake up. This is all temporary. Here's what nobody tells you about awakening: you have to let your old self die. Not metaphorically. Not partially. The version of you that built its identity on lies, that clung to false certainties, that played small to feel safe, that you must perish. This is why spiritual traditions speak of initiation by ordeal. Why shamans undergo symbolic deaths. Why alchemists sought to dissolve base metals into pure gold. You are the metal. The fire is now. After all this struggle, the ultimate revelation is almost laughable: there is nothing to find. No secret knowledge. No perfect state. No finish line where you finally arrive. The treasure you've been seeking was buried in plain sight, in the way sunlight hits dust motes, in the absurdity of human laughter, in the unbearable tenderness of ordinary moments. This is what T.S. Eliot meant when he wrote, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." Now begins the real work. Stop seeking. The seeker is the last disguise of the ego. Embrace paradox. You are both everything and nothing. Fall in love with the mystery. Certainty is the death of wonder. Every spiritual master, every great artist, every revolutionary, they all glimpse this truth. The most profound wisdom looks like madness to those still dreaming. From this moment forward, success becomes irrelevant, aliveness becomes the metric. Relationships transform when you stop needing others to validate your existence. Even suffering takes on new meaning, not as punishment, but as the friction required for awakening. You'll walk through the same world, but it won't be the same world. You'll look in the same mirror, but you won't see the same person. Here's the final, brutal beauty: even this realization isn't permanent. You'll forget. You'll fall back asleep. You'll build new prisons and call them homes. But now, you know the game. And when the forgetting comes, as it will, you'll recognize it. Not as failure, but as part of the dance. The eternal rhythm of consciousness forgetting and remembering itself. When you walk away from this moment, when the screen goes dark and the world comes rushing back, do this: look at your hands. Really look. See the miracle of blood and bone that types texts and touches skin. Feel the breath moving through you without your permission. Hear the silence beneath the noise. This ordinary moment is the secret you've been chasing. Not in some distant enlightenment. Not in some perfected future. Here. Now. Already. The door was never locked. You were always free.